Hello and welcome to Dead Times, the only horror movie podcast recorded while chained in the back of a school bus. I'm your host Peter, and with me as always is the one guy who keeps asking me to carve a jack-o'-lantern with him, Tim. Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about Trick or Treat because it is Halloween. Happy Halloween, everyone!
Ditto.
So throw on the Monster Mash, get into your costume, and gorge on some candy corn because we're about to celebrate Halloween style. All right, Trick or Treat. This is one of my favorite movies, and it actually is a movie I watch every Halloween. Um,
I think I might join you in that from now on.
yeah, um, and I know a lot of people who watch it every Halloween. I don't think it has supplanted the movie Halloween to a great extent. Um, but I think it's the closest thing
It's
that
not really trying.
I don't think they're actually competing against each other. Um,
Yeah.
but like I know that this is sort of has become one of these like hugely iconic horror movies. Um, and it's sort of an underground movie because it didn't get a huge release, but like people who love horror movies have shown it to their friends, and everyone sort of um, loves it because it's so good. Um, and the thing that this does that sort of Halloween doesn't do to a less extent is that this is a movie about Halloween, like the actual holiday. Um,
Yeah, and it is maybe the Halloweeniest thing that ever Halloweened. Like it is just coated in in autumny, Halloweeny, spooky imagery, just front to back, and it's so good.
yeah, I mean, this is a movie about trick or treating. It's a movie about costume parties. It's a movie about pulling pranks. It's a movie about scary ghost stories. Um, it is a movie about Halloween. Um, in a way that I don't think really any other horror movie or really any movie in general has managed to be. Um, and for that, I love it so much. Um, and the unique thing about this movie is that it's sort of five interconnected stories, all taking place in one night in one town. So I guess we should sort of go through them one by one. Um, the first the first story is the opening, um, which is where a married couple, Emma and Henry, are coming home from
One of
Halloween.
the Kilo Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, and Leslie Bibb of a bunch of different things. But I really remember her from Popular on the WB because I'm old. Um, but they're coming home from their night of debauchery on Halloween, very, very, very drunk. Uh, and Leslie Bibb's character decides to blow out her jack o' lanterns and start taking down her Halloween decorations, while Tamo Pinnicket's character goes upstairs and watches porn, waiting for her to come up for a nice ending to the night.
And
And
to his credit, like he was pretty movie savvy because he was like, "No, dude, you shouldn't do that.
oh yeah, no,
Like that'll be bad." And he was absolutely right.
and
If everybody was more like him, there would be a much lower body count in this movie.
yeah, and this movie has an insane body count. Which and the thing is that this movie it sort of implies that this is the level of body count that every Halloween has in this town, which would be
Yeah, or maybe everywhere in this universe, but in particular this town.
yeah, which would be bonker balls because there are so many people dead at the end of this movie.
Yeah, there are just corpses lying around in the street that people don't notice because it's Halloween at the moment. But like the morning after this, it's
Oh,
it's going to be a big.
the street cleaners are going to be like just piling the corpses up on the corners, waiting for their. I guess they're going to have to go back to like in the Black Plague when they had the wagon
Yeah,
coming through because there are dead bodies.
bring out
Literally,
you,
there are
bring out you.
yeah, there are so many dead bodies in this movie. Okay, but anyways,
Yeah.
back to Emma. She is taking down the Halloween decorations, and then she's attacked um, by an unseen assailant who slits her throat and then dismembers her and then shoves a sucker in her mouth. Um, which there are a lot of things I actually really like about this opening. Which number one, I love that robot costume. Um,
Yes. So good.
it's so like adorably dorky, um, and I like it because it's sort of a nice counterpoint to the sexy girls that show up later in costume. Um,
Right.
be that she is literally in the most shapeless box that she clearly made herself. Um, and this really does show like what this movie is going to be about. Um, because what this movie is about is basically every sort of storyline. There's a character who breaks some sort of rule on Halloween and gets horribly punished for it. Um,
Yeah. By just sort of the whims of the universe, really.
mhm.
Ultimately, it's not
Yeah,
just aside from Sam, there isn't anybody who's particularly dedicated to punishing people for breaking the rules. It just kind of happens,
yeah,
um, which is
um,
kind of great.
yeah. Um, and that's what that like. And again, that is one of the things I love about it. That's how it becomes sort of this iconic Halloween movie, is because of the fact that the characters are engaged so deeply in sort of our ideas of what Halloween is, enough that when they break those rules, like it's the same thing as sort of in a slasher movie, everyone splitting up and going off on their own, or um, yeah, it's breaking those sort of traditional Halloween ideas just becomes sort of, oh, you're about to die.
Yeah, yeah, and it gives it's sort of it's very it's sort of gratifying for people like me who love Halloween, um, because it lends a sort of tangibility to the proceedings. That it's it's this whole movie that is set up to be like, no, this shit is important, dude. Like, you got to do it. Um,
Yeah,
it's just that in this universe, people die if they don't.
yeah,
So it's cool that it's stuff, a lot of stuff, which is honestly pretty silly, is treated as being so important.
hmm
I really appreciate that.
yeah. I mean, they do give these rules sort of this quasi mystical sheen over the course of the movie, where like all this stuff is supposed to be um, to basically keep the dead, keep the ghosts
Yeah.
away, keep the demons at bay. Um, but again, it's never really explicitly uh, played out that way. Um, it's just that every time someone breaks one of these rules, uh, they get horribly killed.
Yeah, but it's not like it just sort of happens in the course of the stories that are being told. It's not explicitly what the movie is about,
Yeah,
really.
they rarely underline it, and are like,
Right.
really in this opening scene is the opening scene in the very last storyline, um, are the only times where they're explicitly like, well, if you do this, something bad's gonna happen, and then
Yeah,
something
and that's
bad
because
does happen.
both of those involve Sam,
Mhm.
who's the only monster who seems to be actually motivated by that, or at
Yeah,
least that's what's implied.
yeah. Whereas everything else is sort of diffused, and you only realize sort of on rewatch that, oh, they did something wrong.
Hmm.
All right, so let's move on. The next story is the principal, which is the local principal of the elementary school, I believe. Um,
Principal, not William H. Macy.
yeah. Well, principal. The character's name is Principal Wilkins. And sort of this obnoxious little kid. He knocks over a bunch of jack o' lanterns. And goes up to Principal Wilkins' house, where Principal Wilkins is not there, but has left one of those traditional, oh, I'll leave a jack-o'-lantern candy sort of bowl out, and everyone can just take one, with the sign that says just take one. Um, and then of course Charlie grabs like handfuls of them. Bad Charlie, bad Charlie. Uh,
He's trying to break away from his destiny as a Charlie of getting no candy, getting rocks.
yeah. Um, but then Principal Wilkins shows up and uh, basically gives him a poisoned candy bar that causes an intensely long vomiting of blood scene.
Yeah, maybe should have used a different poison.
Yeah.
Because like that seems unnecessarily unpleasant for the serial killer in that.
Yeah.
In that
Although
instance.
that is how he gets his costume for this entire storyline.
This is true. I
which,
guess maybe it's a two birds with one stone.
Because his costume is just I'm wearing a blood splattered T-shirt or shirt, dress shirt.
Everybody totally buys it. Right? He doesn't
is,
even have to make an excuse. Like, oh, this is just my costume. It's just they just assume.
Yeah. Which I mean, and then the trick or treaters from the next storyline show up at his house, and
Anything for a good cause.
yeah. And he gives them a jack-o'-lantern, but he takes Charlie's dead body way to the back of his house and puts it in a grave where there's already another body in it.
At least one.
Yeah.
Because what I thought in some shots it looked like there were more, but I couldn't quite tell.
Yeah. And then this movie switches to being a hilarious comedy because he is constantly being interrupted in attempting to bury these bodies. His son keeps leaning out the window, screaming about how he wants help with carving the jack-o'-lantern. The neighbor's dog keeps barking and trying to get into the yard. The neighbor, the crotchety old man, starts screaming at him about how he has an NRA membership. And Principal Wilkins does the funniest thing ever, which is he takes his shovel and chops off a finger and throws it at the dog to get the dog to shut up.
That is practicality right there. That is resourcefulness.
But
Spray on me with the eyes. I will.
Yeah. Oh, well then he goes back in the house, and again, his son is being super annoying about this jack-o'-lantern, and you think that Principal Wilkins is gonna kill him, and instead, nope. It turns out they're working together to chop open Charlie's head.
Yeah, which is pretty great because like as it's starting to make it look like he's gonna kill his own kid, like it starts to seem like, oh man, I don't know if this is gonna be, I don't know if this fits with the tone of this movie so far, because this seems, because it's up to that point and actually throughout the whole movie, like it's dark in a really fun, not like super outwardly goofy way, but it's not meant to be taken super seriously, and so like being adjusted to that tone as it started to make it look like he was gonna just stab his 5-year-old son in the top of the head. I was like, this seems like it'll maybe be a little too dark for this movie, and then the direction it went in is perfect.
Oh yeah,
for
that reveal
so
is
yes, this feels right.
Yeah, that reveal is beautiful. Which, and particularly because the whole Wilkins attempting to bury the bodies scene is, I think, by far the biggest comedic set scene in the entire movie. And like it is just straight up comedy because like he's just constantly being interrupted and like getting frustrated, and like everyone around him is being super weird. Like his neighbor starts complaining about the fact that it smells bad, and the dog
His neighbor actually,
yeah. And the dog keeps barking and his son won't shut up. And you kind of got to feel bad for him because the fact that all he wants to do is bury these dead bodies, one of which is starting to move again. And he's just like jabbing it with his shovel to try and kill it. All right. So do you have anything else to say about the principal?
Um, well, he gets his just desserts later,
Oh, does he ever?
which is um, yeah, that scene in his backyard is probably the funniest
Mhm,
sequence in the
mhm.
movie, but the best punchline is that scene, which we'll get to in a bit.
Yeah. All right. Well, the
And it's
next.
really like three punchlines all at the same time.
Yeah, this movie doesn't forget about its characters, even though it is sort of an anthology movie. They all sort of show up again in other people's storylines.
It's Pulp Fiction rules is basically what it is because
Yeah.
we keep sort of jumping around in time to
Hmm.
other characters' perspectives. We see events through multiple perspectives.
Hmm. Um, like you really do. The whole movie sort of takes place during Emma and Henry's walk home from the from downtown. Um, because
Earlier.
yeah, uh, their deaths occur at the chronologically at the end of the movie, even if they're shown at the beginning, and then sort of the way you can track the timeline of the movie is by when the different characters run into them uh, and where they run into them, um,
Yes.
which is sort of an interesting, which is a really really cute that like oh there's Emma and Henry again, but it's also a really interesting way to like keep track of a movie that jumps around in time as much as this one does.
Yeah, it's really it's a really well structured movie,
Oh
honestly, for something that could have been could have been just sort of just sort of sewn together like a lot of anthology movies are. Um,
yeah, I'm
that
like this
really
is
it takes the time to be cohesive.
yeah this is a switch watch of a movie. Like everything fits in perfectly, and
Yes.
which is again why it's has such a like sterling reputation. Okay, so the next storyline is the school bus massacre, um, which we've seen a couple trick or
Might have been
treater.
my favorite.
I I really do love this particular one. I actually have a fondness for one of the actors who's in this particular storyline. Um,
Well, Rhonda is the best character in the movie.
oh,
Like,
she's awesome.
let's not mince words here.
But yeah, the guy or the kid who plays Schrader is Jean-Luc Belledu, who is, I believe, French Canadian. Um, and I've seen a weirdly large amount of his filmography. Um,
Huh.
he was on Kyle XY as the younger son. Um, he was in Piranha 2, um, where he got his dick eaten by a piranha. Um,
That's
he,
just sad.
yeah, he was on the freeform sitcom Baby Daddy, which is one of the worst sitcoms that I've seen every episode of. Um, so like every time he shows up, I'm like I forget that he's there. I'm like, oh hey, it's that guy that I've seen in like 1,000 things. Um,
I guess it pays to watch a lot of shit.
it really does. Um, but yeah, so in the principle, these trick or treaters have come to the door and they want, in addition to um, candy, they want his jack o' lantern. Um, and it's this group of trick or treaters that are trying to get, I think it's 8 jack o' lanterns. Um,
Yeah. So
yeah, they're trying to get 8 jack o' lanterns together, and then they're going to go to a rock quarry. Um,
the old abandoned Rockport.
yeah, they're going to go to the rock quarry where
We do rules. There's always an old abandoned rock quarry.
yeah, where there's a town legend about how uh, many years ago, uh, a group of 8 mentally disturbed children were traveling home on a bus, chained to the bus um, on Halloween, and their parents paid to have the bus driver drive them into the rock quarry to kill them. Um,
And that flashback sequence might be the best in the movie, just from filmmaking, just like the way it's shot and the colors.
mhm,
It takes place on Planet Brian Fuller.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
And it's just the way the music is really really good. It's again, even though it's kind of silly, it's like this is one of the biggest strengths of this movie is that it's not taking itself all that seriously, but it's still legitimately evocative in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Though.
Which I think is why I like this story the best, is because I
Yeah.
think it does that the most well.
Yeah. Um, and I don't know who picked out those costumes for those kids, but that person was a demented person
Yeah,
because those costumes are frightening. Like, why would you
yeah, and
pick?
I think like it just looking at them, like it gets under your skin. You're like, what is under there? What do these kids look like? Because we're told that they're all, it's vaguely alluded to that they're sort of freakish because they're all on this bus because they're sent to this particular school far away from the regular school because their parents don't want them interacting with the other kids, and it's it's so legitimately creepy because what are these things all chained to this bus?
Yeah. Um, and of course they all die. Poor kids. Um, and
We
so
will quote unquote die.
yeah. And so these four trick or treaters are trying to get 8 jack o' lanterns to go to the quarry to create basically a memorial of them. But they're having trouble because of the fact that
Oh,
again, yeah, they're having trouble finding jack o' lanterns because of course Charlie from the first story had been going around knocking them over. Um, so they wind up going to Rhonda's house, who Rhonda also has some sort of ambiguously stated disorder, um, which basically the kids refer to in the most like horrible way. Um,
Yeah, and it never even really seems to come up in the story. Like just the way that she interacts with them, she just seems kind of introverted.
yeah,
Like
and
nobody would in a normal world, nobody would see anything wrong with this person.
yeah, like she's dressed like a witch and she made hundreds of jack o' lanterns. Um,
Yeah, but that's cool. I would do that if I could.
yeah, no, she's clearly really talented. Um, and Schrader, the one
And
guy,
Trader totally has on her.
yeah, um, which like he seems to at least really like her as a person. But Macy, the girl dressed as an angel, is just evil. Um, but so they take the 8 jack o' lanterns to the quarry, where there's an elevator that can only hold 3 people at a time. Um,
Ostensibly.
yeah, and so they take the one group of jack o' lanterns down, leaving the rest with Rhonda and the kid dressed as a pirate. Um, and then the elevator comes back up, and Rhonda and the kid dressed like a pirate go down. Um, and they get attacked by sort of evil sludge monsters who look like the zombie kids from the story. And Rhonda runs. Um, the kid who looks like a pirate like gets ripped apart. Um, and Rhonda falls and bashes her head in. And it turns out it's all just a mean prank by Macy, um, which I can't which doesn't honestly make a whole lot of sense because were they always planning to pull this prank on Rhonda? Um,
Yeah, like they must have been extraordinarily well prepared because they had these costumes, which probably took a lot of work,
yeah, they had
and they
everything.
carefully. It seems like a whole lot of effort to go to just to get like a 10-second scare out of this one girl that apparently none of them even know all that well.
Yeah,
That's a long way to go around for a little reward.
yeah. I mean, it is sort of a Carrie-esque type of situation.
I was gonna say.
um,
Um,
but yeah, they go all the way to just mess with this poor girl, um, who like again like thinks she's having like this really cool Halloween time where she's gonna hang out with some other kids and they're gonna do something sort of fun and scary, and then
Yeah, and like the other kids could have just done that. Like doing this prank seems marginally, if at all, more fun than just what than the false pretenses that they were doing that under.
yeah, and not doing the false pretenses is what gets them killed because
Exact.
they do not set up the memorial to the group of kids that got or that went to the bus, even though they now like the bus is literally just sitting there like hanging half out of the
Yeah,
water.
I love the interaction between Macy and the kid dressed as a pirate is that they're like, that he's just like, okay, wait, if if this was all just a prank, then why is there that school bus right there? And Macy, oh, that part's true. Like the whole thing actually happened. It's just,
Yeah, like yeah,
and they have proof of it. Like it's right there.
it is. Yeah, it is right there. And it is that is a very creepy image. Seeing that old bus hanging out of the water like that. Um,
Yeah, and the masks are still floating in the water.
yeah, and so of course because they did not set up their memorial to the kids that died, what happens? Naturally, of course, the kids come back and then start killing them. And the one girl with the braces where like she was wearing chains to scare Rhonda and like just foot on the chains yanked back. Uh,
Yes.
and then she gets eaten. Um, and so the four trick-or-treaters, run all the way to the elevator, except for the fact that Rhonda's already in the elevator, and they start begging her, open up the door, we're all gonna die. Um, and she
Then in
does,
truth,
and then she just reaches over, presses the up button, and goes home. You know what? Good for her.
yeah. And then she passes Sam walking out of it, and they have like a respect moment
Yep, they're members of the same tribe.
between fellow creatures of the night.
Hmm. Yeah,
Creature of the night.
yeah. I
Creature.
mean, I'm assuming that next Halloween, the principal's son, Sam, and Rhonda are all going to be trick or treating together.
Yep.
Um,
And there will be no other trick or treaters left alive by
there,
the next day.
yeah, this town got heavily depopulated by the end of this night. Like, this is one of those where it's like towns that got completely decimated by the Black Death type of situation going on because everyone gets murdered over the course of this
Yeah.
night.
Yeah. It's
All right. So the next storyline is the surprise party, um, which is Lori, who's played by Anna Paquin, uh, uh, formerly of True Blood and formerly the X-Men's Rogue, uh, is going to a Halloween party with her sister and her two friends. But she's a virgin and she's very nervous because they want her to lose her virginity. Um, so they all get dressed up in hot
these are
costumes.
terms that are being used more loosely than previously understood.
Yeah. No, it is a term that gets thrown around in a very new context. Um, so they all get dressed up in like hot costumes, and uh, the her sister and the two other friends basically just go up to guys and are like, "Hey, want to bang? Meet us here, and we're gonna totally do it."
Yeah,
Um,
and being guys, okay, sure. That was a free.
yeah. Lori, meanwhile, is like she just she keeps looking for someone quote unquote special. Um, and so there's a lot of her just wandering around, kind of feeling bad about the fact that she has not lost her virginity yet, and trying to find this mythical guy.
Probably dressed as Red Riding Hood, as it turns out.
Of course she is. Um,
Get it? You get it?
yep. Meanwhile, there's a vampire loose in the town. Um, Yeah, sort of this creepy guy in a mask with fangs lures a
He's
woman
got
down an
Star
alley.
Butler, Phantom of the Mask.
Yeah, lures a woman in the alley and murders her, which no one notices because of the fact that everyone's already dressed up in like blood and gore everywhere. So they
Yeah.
don't notice the dead
Yeah,
body.
when that happened, I just assumed that was going to be the last we saw of that. That was just a, oh yeah, there's also a vampire killing people, but that we were never going to touch on it again.
Yeah, like it is
But we
sort
did
of.
because there's shit like that in this movie. Like there's, um, I mean, really nothing is ultimately explained. Like there's a lot of, these are all stories in progress that we're just kind of brushing up against. We
Yeah,
don't know what the fuck the deal with Sam is. We don't know what the deal with the principal and his son is. It's just
yeah, it's very slice of your life. I think, um,
yeah,
like
it's sort of fragments from a bunch of different stories put together to make a whole
like
in a way that's really really clever and really entertaining.
yeah, the only one that I would say is sort of a tight story circle is the school bus massacre. I think every story tells a complete storyline, but they excise all of the sort of unimportant stuff, which includes a
Yeah,
lot of exposition. Um,
yeah, because they don't need to, because the
yeah.
way that the premise of the movie works is just kind of generally understood
Hmm.
that this is the way things work, which is really refreshing because I felt very respected as an audience member by this movie. It's
Yeah.
it's really unpatronizing because like a lot of movies that have premises like any one of the supernatural premises in this movie, there's a lot of hand holding to get you to understand what's going on that really isn't needed.
A
um
vampire?
you know
What's a vampire? How do you kill a vampire?
yeah,
Like
yeah, exactly.
you.
Yes, we don't need to know what a vampire is again.
Yeah, it's this movie. You know, like we know what like zombies coming back from the grave for revenge. We know sort of what that is in the school bus massacre. We don't need to be like have I don't know them performing some sort of ritual or whatever. The stuff that would fill up an entire movie, we don't need. We can just do the sort of
Exactly.
short, truncated. Here's the principal. He's a serial killer. Here's some kids that ran afoul of sort of a cursed place, and here's what happened to them. And then here's Lori, who's looking for someone special, and she's
Yeah.
wandering around the woods and gets attacked by a vampire. Um, which and
But
yeah, and then uh, what this movie does that's really really genius is that then all of a sudden the next thing you know, you see Lori's she was dressed as Red Riding Hood. You see her cloak fall down from the trees, um, and everyone sort of looks frightened. Um, and then they go to investigate, and you pull the cloak open, and it's the vampire who is begging for help. And when,
please don't.
and of course, when they remove the mask, it's Principal Wilkins.
Who's going to leave his son very lonely?
Yeah.
He can't do the eyes by himself. How is he going to do the eyes now?
uh, that next Halloween's going to be rough for him.
It really is. He's the real victim in this story.
He really is. Um, and then all the women rip off their skin and turn into werewolves. And there's like a field of like 50 guys that have been ripped apart.
Yeah, which the camera cleverly avoids until until that moment,
Yeah,
which is pretty great. It's great when the principal just realizes that he looks around. Oh shit! There's a bunch of corpses here.
which like what they do is again the way it's lit, the way it's filmed, it's done so you think that what our corpses are just like drunk people passed out. Um,
Right.
but nope, all the women are werewolves. What do you think of the werewolf effects?
I mean, they're not the greatest in the world. I thought what they did with them was creative. That
Mhm,
it's not just they transform. That they literally have to kind of shed their skin.
mhm.
I thought that was really cool, and I thought the practical effects that they cut to, the sort of werewolf puppets that they have, on standby, were really really cool. Um, but the bits of CG that they used in between, I thought were decent. But and part of that is just that I would assume that this movie had a relatively tiny budget.
Yeah,
Um,
and they obviously spent a lot of money on Sam. Um,
yes, yeah, and Sam looks great. Like
mhm,
everything with Sam is perfect.
yeah.
Um,
I do think that you can see the seams in the budget with the werewolves, but I think that I don't necessarily want. This movie is taking place obviously in a heightened reality, and I don't necessarily want, or I don't necessarily need like a very hyper realistic werewolf.
yeah, um, yeah, and also for me, like nothing tops the werewolf stuff in the third Harry Potter movie, but
Mhm,
that's a very untraditional sort of werewolf. Um, that
mhm.
it's because it was hairless and sort of misshapen and weird, and that was what I liked about it. But it's very untypical, and that wouldn't fit with the very archetypical sort of fundamental versions of all the horror elements that are in this movie. You gotta
Right.
have these sort of creatively handled but roughly baseline werewolves for it to work,
Yeah.
which is of course foreshadowed in the previous story because the howling is heard and Rhonda's like, oh, listen, werewolves, and the kid's like,
Mhm.
really? and
Yeah.
we just sort of was like, no, it's just some other kids having fun, but no, it turns out to actually be werewolves.
Yep.
Because of
Um,
course it does. Why do we doubt that?
yeah, you should never, if you hear howling, never doubt that it's werewolves.
Well,
Um,
in this movie, yeah.
and then there's,
Whatever the spookiest thing you can think of, is yeah, that was it.
mhm,
Of course, it was werewolf.
mhm. Yeah. But yeah, so Lori lost her virginity, which turns out to be eating someone. Uh, yeah, eating someone. I was gonna say cannibalism, but do werewolves count as people to commit
Debatable.
cannibalism? We'll put a question mark on that. Maybe we'll throw up a
Yeah.
poll or something. Um, but yeah, um, and then we get to our final storyline, which is, I believe, the longest out of all of them. Meet Sam, um, which is uh, a guy named Krieg, who is the next door neighbor of Principal Wilkins. Um, uses his dog to scare trick or treaters and steal their candy. Um, and
Which even outside the universe of this movie is just a shitty thing to do.
oh yeah, no, this guy's a piece of shit. Like, especially when we find out the full story about Krieg, um,
Yeah.
he is a piece of shit. Um, but yeah, he sort of is just at his home eating his stolen candy when Sam, the little kid that murdered Emma earlier, shows up. And
Will later.
what? Uh,
Will murder Emma later, but
yeah,
murdered her earlier in. But
yeah.
yeah, sorry, just
Time.
semantics.
This movie is obsessed with time. Because this storyline is taking place concurrently with when the principal is burying the kids and the kids in the backyard. Um, so it's taking place before when the principal gets killed by Lori the werewolf.
Yes.
But
Which Sam is also present for, just kind of hanging out.
yeah, I mean,
Which is one of the that's one of the coolest things about this movie is that it is not just that Sam is everywhere,
mhm,
which is just sort of standard connecting thread stuff, but that all of the other supernatural entities tolerate him.
Mhm.
that he always just gets to be around, um, which I
Yeah.
think is really cool.
Yeah, none of the other ones attack him in any way. Like, I think they can tell that he's
Yeah,
not.
and they don't even really acknowledge that he's there, but it's just you get this sense. Okay, Sam is safe. Sam is not prey.
Yeah. Like, do you think that these people have some sort of, or these ghouls, I guess, have some sort of community where, the zombie kids from the school bus massacre hang out with the werewolves and.
I mean, it doesn't seem that way, but at the same time, that again, as fellow creatures of the night, that there is this understanding, that the werewolves might not hang out with Sam, but they seem to know at least vaguely what Sam is, and so anyway, Sam gets to be there.
Yeah, because they're
Sam gets to be.
definitely all three of the supernatural creatures wind up in the same, basically, like, a couple of feet away from each other at one point in this movie. Um,
Yeah,
because the werewolves are driving around in a car while Sam is murdering Emma, while the zombie kids from the school bus massacre are showing up somewhere. So they're all sort of, again, in this very, 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 very small area, um, which I think is sort of fascinating in its own right. Um, but yeah, so
I
Krieg, he finds um, his home graffitied on the inside with "trick or treat, give me something good to eat" all over the place. Um, and then he's attacked by Sam, who is, again, this sort of kid who he's wearing footy pajamas, and this giant burlap sack over his head. Um,
this is a
and
great.
yeah, it's a very iconic looking image, that's sort of at that exact point where it's very creepy but also very cute.
Yeah, yeah, which fits for Sam because Sam, sort of ultimately seems to be just the embodiment of Halloween. He's
Mm-hmm.
like the Halloween avatar,
Yeah.
and so that fits. He's both scary and sweet.
Mm-hmm. And they get into a whole series of fights, um, where Krieg repeatedly shoots him with a shotgun and reveals that Sam's inside seems to be pumpkin, the insides of a pumpkin. Like, there are seeds and, like, the orange stringy stuff. Because at one point Sam's hand gets cut off, and, like, it's just trailing pumpkin entrails as it's moving around the house.
Now, like we say that, but my impression as a kid carving pumpkins was always that the inside of pumpkins was clearly um, human innards, um,
Yeah.
which bothered me intensely. So this, that didn't really surprise me. This
Yeah.
movie didn't teach me anything like
Yeah. Um, Eventually, Sam's burlap sack gets ripped off, and he has a head that's basically a cross between a skull and a pumpkin, um, which again looks amazing. And then there's that really amazing scene where,
it does, but it's not quite as good as the mask, I think.
yeah, I don't think it's
Um,
as effective. Um, do you wish that they had never removed the mask?
no, I think they had to. I think they maybe could have lingered a little less on what was actually underneath, and I think the design could have been a little bit creepier because you want sort of the impression that you get watching Sam sort of walk around is that he's this tiny little thing, but you get the sense that that's concealing something, legitimately monstrous.
Mhm.
And I felt like it being revealed that he was just a sort of little gray alien dude
Mhm.
was slightly underwhelming. But it still works. It still works well enough, and it is still a cool design.
Yeah. Uh, which eventually sort of Sam corners Krieg, uh, and is about to kill him, but instead of stabbing him, grabs a candy bar off of his chest that had fallen there. and then
Well, no, no,
leaves.
no, no. He does stab him. He does stab him, and the sharpened lollipop that he was trying to stab him with instead it hits the candy bar, so he's
Mhm.
saved by the candy.
Yeah. Because again, what Sam wanted was to trick or treat, and what rule did Krieg break? Well, it was the fact that he uh, was scaring the kids away and stealing their candy, not giving them
Yeah.
the treat. Um, and then Sam leaves Krieg's house and looks across the street to see good old Emma blowing out the jack o' lantern. Um, and as he's leaving, we find out that Krieg was in fact the bus driver that the parents had hired to kill their children from the school bus massacre. Um, so, do you have anything else to say about the Meet Sam storyline?
Let's see. Um, I don't know. I really like I guess I've been talking throughout the podcast about Sam, but it really is only in this story that we actually get a sense of who and what Sam is, and I think that Sam is one of the coolest things about the movie.
Yeah.
And it's such a neat concept, and and again, just feels so Halloweenish, to
Yeah.
have this kind of vengeful spirit wandering around in the form of this tiny little trick or treater,
Hmm.
um, smiting people for not following the Halloween rules.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's a really cool little idea, and it's executed really well.
Yeah. Which I mean, Sam predates this movie by a decade, maybe or more, because he first appeared in sort of a short animated film that the director made. Um,
Hmm.
and then,
Oh, that makes sense. See that.
yeah, um, and like he is the sort of this really just cool element that, again, just sort of shows up in these various storylines and is never really explained, um, at least up until Meet Sam. Uh, he's just sort
Yeah.
of there as sort of these things are playing out.
And even there, he isn't really. We don't know what he is. We don't know where he comes from. But it's cool because the spiel that people have been giving about Halloween throughout this movie is this is the night when the dead and all kinds of other things walk.
Hmm.
And so it's cool after getting a movie full of very very recognizable archetypes. We have zombies, we have werewolves, we have a serial killer, to then just have this mysterious other thing that we have no lore for,
Yeah.
um, which is it's really effective. He's just some sort of random thing, and it's evocative because it makes you think of okay, what the fuck else is out there in this
Hmm.
world? What else is wandering around this town or around this place, that we don't see in this movie. Sam makes you think about that. Which I think
Yeah.
is really cool.
He is really, really great. And as I was saying before, like, we don't really need to have any backstory for Sam. We know what his motivation is by his actions. Um, and like figuring out what his motivation is part of the fun of the movie. Um, being like, oh, he wanted to trick or treat, and Krieg was not allowing him to trick or treat. And so he had to punish Krieg. And then it sort of goes back to, well, okay, well, then he had to punish Emma too, for taking down her decorations. Um,
Yeah,
like,
which Krieg, after mending his ways uh, and deciding to give candy out for the rest of the night, he sees Sam walking to that house across the street, and he's I don't need to see this, and goes and starts to go inside
yeah, like
before he presumably killed by the children from the bus.
yeah, like I do not need to have any real explanation of Sam. Like, I think
No,
if they had like the traditional horror movie old guy, crazy guy who goes, well, 50 years ago, these kids summoned up a demon and yada 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 yada. I don't
right.
need that. Like I can figure out what Sam wants and sort of have a general idea of what he is. Uh, and so we're left with sort of just this perfect little short film, a segment of a film, um, that of watching him do what he does.
Yeah, and what he will presumably do to many more people before dawn.
Probably. And
You would
then,
think that this town would have learned their lesson by now if this has been the way things have been.
yeah, because it definitely seems like this happens every Halloween.
Yeah, that's the understanding that we're given.
Um,
Uh,
because
yeah, so
there are,
learn your lesson, guys. Come on.
yeah, there are so many people who die in this movie. Like this movie has one of the highest body counts I think of any non-Godzilla attacking an entire city movie. Um,
Right.
because so many people, like there have to be like no men left in that town alive, given just how many died
Yeah.
at that werewolf attack.
Yeah, and before that, the principal was presumably, giving out poison candy to people all night. Um, oh yeah, that's the other thing is that Sam's weapon of choice for attacking Krieg is a candy bar with a razor in it, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's a pretty awesome little piece of Halloween lore, which apparently I looked it up one time. That has apparently never happened. That's a favorite warning of parents is you check your candy because if people have found razor blades in them. It has literally never even happened once.
Oh yeah, I
Which I think is pretty.
definitely know my parents have told me that um that for a really long time you're not supposed to have any soft candy, only like hard stuff like lollipops and the little root beer candies, um,
Right.
butterscotches because of the fact that
I hate.
people might inject them with poison, which happened in this movie. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, this is a movie that knows its Halloween stuff and revels in it.
Yes.
But yeah, so after we're gone through all of our stories, we're sort of free to a very or a very short conclusion, uh, which again features Emma and Henry coming home. Rhonda with her little wagon full of jack-o'-lanterns is coming back to her house, and she almost gets hit by the werewolf girls who are having the time of their lives in their own car. And Krieg has decided to start handing out candy to trick-or-treaters. But unfortunately, the last batch of trick-or-treaters that show up are those dead kids from the school bus massacre. And
Yes.
they want their vengeance and their candy.
Presumably.
Yeah. Um, so, do you have any thoughts about the movie as a whole?
I mean, it's awesome. It's probably one of it might be my favorite movie that we've covered on this podcast so far. I don't think it's objectively the best. Though that's probably one of the first two that we did, either Godzilla or Carrie.
Mhm.
But it's really appealing to me. It's really fun. I was thinking one thing I was thinking about watching it. I was trying to figure out. I was like, why does this? Because I was thinking about how it compares to what would seem to me to obviously be its closest cousin, which is Creepshow.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't like Creepshow. I don't have any particular problem with it. I don't think there's anything really wrong with it. It just really didn't work for me. Because it's also it's supposed to be kind of legitimately scary, but also kind of funny and not taking itself all that seriously. But I didn't really find the parts of it I thought were supposed to be scary, and I didn't think I found the parts of it that were supposed to be funny amusing. I just found the whole thing kind of unpleasant and claustrophobic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the difference there, aside from just the storytelling sensibility here being one that I'm more down with, is the fact that it's so Halloweenish.
Mm-hmm.
The fact it's just coated in this um, uh, all of this Halloween aesthetic. Um, yeah, like you were saying, just kind of revels in it, and it feels, again, I describe Creepshow as claustrophobic, which is not this movie at all. You feel the night air, you feel the this expansive night and all these numerous mysteries that reside in it. Um, and so that's it's really really fun. Um,
Well, yeah, like um, again, every it used to be every Halloween that you would watch Halloween, and then uh, once this movie started getting really circulated, it really, again, I don't want to say it started supplanting Halloween or replacing Halloween, but it is now become very much sort of one of those Halloween movies that you throw on um, and
yeah,
watch every Halloween because it is such a movie about what Halloween means to people. Um,
yeah, it captures that. It captures that fully. Um, yeah, and it's spooky. It's not very disturbing, and it's mostly not outwardly comedic. Spooky is the perfect term for it, which is absolutely fitting given the subject matter.
yeah,
Um,
and this movie
I could
is
see, I could see like I could see like this being the movie that you would throw on Halloween when all your friends were over, and then Halloween you put on later when it's just you and your significant other snuggle up on the couch in the wee hours.
yeah, because this movie is so much fun. Like if you haven't seen it, it's hard to really convey just how much fun it is to watch this movie. Um, like
Absolutely.
like it is a movie that is joyous in its own way. Um,
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing is that yeah, again, like it's again in opposition to a lot of horror movies and also Creepshow, which is another kind of semi-comedic version of a horror movie, and it's also an anthology. Um, a lot of horror movies are to some degree or another, at times unpleasant to watch. This is never unpleasant to watch. It is just you're never you never have any inclination to look away from the screen. You're always just totally absorbed in it, totally just wanting to see what crazy thing comes next.
yeah, and like it is very much just clean storytelling without like any of the extraneous stuff that drags it down and um like there honestly isn't a character that I you don't like in this movie. Um
Weird because a good half of the characters turn out to be monsters and murderers.
yeah. Um
Macy, I don't like, but I,
yeah.
I didn't find her annoying when she was on the screen. But
Yeah.
she's
Like
yeah, the girl who didn't do anything more harmful than pull a kind of a mean prank is more unlikable in this movie than than the serial killers and werewolves,
yeah. Um
which kind
which
of sums it up in a nutshell. I
yeah.
feel
Um
that's its whole philosophy there.
like yeah, it's just it is just exuberant. Like it is so much fun and like it
It's
is
so it's a celebration of everything awesome about Halloween.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, best
I
death.
haven't even thought about
There are literally so many deaths to choose from in this movie. Um,
it. Yeah, let's see.
I'm gonna have to go with oh, there are so many deaths in this movie. It's hard to pick one that's better than the others. But I'm just gonna have to go with Charlie vomiting endless torrents of blood onto his principal.
Yeah, I think I'll go with Krieg's death at the hands of at the hands of the children
Mhm.
that he tried to kill so long ago. I think that's really satisfying, and it's a really great punchline. Like
Mhm.
that's a perfect way to end the movie. It's such a campfire ghost story sort of twist.
Yeah.
But it's from an earlier thread in the movie that you kind of forgot about.
Mhm.
Um, and it's tied together with seeing him burning the picture earlier, like, oh, so he was the bus driver, and you
Mhm.
think that might be as much as they're going to tie that together. It's like, oh, like that was kind of connected there, and then no, it comes back with a vengeance right in the final moment,
Yeah.
which is pretty awesome.
Uh, so many deaths in this movie. This town has no people left alive in it at the end of this night. All right. Well, happy Halloween, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on the most spectacular night of the year. Um, so go put on the Monster Mash again. Listen to the Vincent Price introduction to a Thriller. Um, find the most absurd costume that could then be labeled sexy. And have a great night. Sign
Oh,
up.
are you going to dress as anything for Halloween?
Uh, I have not gotten my Halloween costume yet. But I'm probably going to be Robin Hood.
All right, that works.
Mhm.
I'm going to be Pete Townsend.
I feel like you're
Got a
gonna have a
strip.
lot of confused trick or treaters.
Yeah, that's that's going to happen. Um, but it's the best I could do on a budget and a time crunch.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope everyone who's listening has their Halloween costume already. Um, have a great night. I've been Peter.
I've been Tim.
Happy Halloween! Ooh,
I got a
spooky.
rock.